Some paths are hidden for a reason. When Maya stumbles upon a forgotten house at the end of a secret trail, she unlocks more than just ancient doors. She awakens a history twisted by sorrow and a chance to rewrite fate. House of Spoils takes you on a haunting journey where keys open more than locks, mirrors hold more than reflections, and courage is the only way forward. If you believe you've seen everything, think again. Behind every door is a new beginning, or a new trap. Dare to step through. Your story is waiting. Will you answer the call? Not every house welcomes visitors. In House of Spoils, follow Maya, a relatable, brave woman who, led by instinct and curiosity, discovers a decaying mansion hidden deep beyond the familiar world. It's not just old, it's alive. Trapped in its hollow walls are whispers of the past, secret reflections, and an ancient burden begging to be released. As Maya ventures deeper, the house transforms before her eyes, unraveling secrets layer by layer. She faces ghostly figures, enchanted objects, and mirrored realities that challenge everything she believes about fate and choice. With only an old key and her courage, Maya must unlock a destiny not just for the house, but for herself. This story weaves suspense, mystery, and wonder into an unforgettable experience that will keep listeners glued to every word. Each chapter builds tension and reveals unexpected twists, culminating in a breathtaking new beginning that feels both earned and magical. If you love stories that blur the lines between reality and fantasy, stories that make you think about the choices you make, House of Spoils will haunt and inspire you long after the last word is spoken. So hit play, dive in, and don't forget. Some doors open not to places, but to possibilities. The sky was bleeding gold and lavender as the sun slipped beneath the hills, casting long shadows across the edges of the sleepy town. The air was cool and still, touched by the scent of pine and earth. Maya walked with her, hands tucked into her jacket pockets, her boots crunching softly on the gravel path that wound just beyond the park she'd visited since childhood. This wasn't her usual route. Most evenings she walked the neighborhood loop, familiar, neat, safe. But something had nudged her in a different direction tonight. Not a voice, not a sound. Just a feeling, like a gentle tug behind her ribs, leading her further away from the streetlights and the hum of traffic toward the woods at the edge of town. She almost missed it. The trailhead wasn't marked. It was nothing more than a narrow, overgrown opening between two crooked trees, half hidden behind a fallen wooden fence. Ivy crept over the broken boards. A rusted sign dangled loosely from one nail. The letters were faint, flaked almost entirely, away by time and rain, but she could just barely make out the words. No entry. Her brow furrowed. Something about the sign struck her as odd. Not because it warned her away, but because it didn't feel like it had been placed by a person. It felt performative, like it was meant to discourage without conviction. Like a test. Maya hesitated, only a moment before stepping over the low fence. As soon as she crossed the threshold, the world shifted. The sounds of the town, the birdsong, the cars, the distant barking of dogs, all faded into silence, as though someone had turned the volume down on the world. The wind died completely. The path under her feet was soft with moss and lined with stones smoothed by age. Trees arched overhead like ancient sentinels, their tangled branches creating a tunnel that swallowed the fading daylight. As she walked, the woods seemed to deepen unnaturally fast, like she'd stepped through time rather then space. A few minutes in, she noticed something else. There were no animal sounds, no crickets, no rustling leaves, only the soft pad of her own footsteps. The silence pressed in, thick and strange. Then she saw it. At the end of the path, past a final bend cloaked in shadows, stood a house. It was larger than it should have been. Tall, slouched to one side, its roof shingled with rot and moss. Vines had grown wild across its face, clawing at its walls, curling over broken window panes. The wooden boards of its porch sagged with age, and one shutter hung by a single hinge, clapping softly against the siding in the breeze. And there, swaying gently above the porch, was a crooked wooden sign. She stepped closer, drawn forward almost against her will. The sign creaked on its rusted chain as it moved, revealing its name in faded gold paint. House of Spoils. A strange tightness gripped her chest. She wasn't sure why, but the name rang with finality, like a warning whispered too late. She should have turned back, but instead, she placed one foot on the first step of the porch. It groaned beneath her, tired and hollow. The front door, half open, creaked wider, as if the house had been waiting. As she crossed the threshold, the wind picked up behind her, and the door slammed shut with a thunderous bang. Maya spun, heart lurching in her chest. The doorknob wouldn't turn, and when she looked back over her shoulder, the house was no longer just empty. It was watching her. The silence inside the house was unlike anything Maya had ever felt. Not just an absence of sound, but a presence of something deeper. It was the kind of silence that settles over places where time has forgotten to move forward. Heavy, breathing, listening. Her fingers trembled slightly as she stepped fully into the entryway, letting her eyes adjust to the dim light. Dust hung in the air like ash, stirred only by her movement. Faint streaks of dusk filtered through the broken windows, casting crooked lines across the floorboards. Each creak beneath her shoes echoed too loudly, as if the house disapproved of her intrusion. The living room stretched out in front of her, a once grand space now crumbling under the weight of its own decay. The walls were papered in a floral pattern, faded and peeling in long strips. Cobwebs draped the corners like lace curtains. A fireplace sat cold and hollow, the mantel above it cluttered with picture frames turned face down. What caught her attention most, though, was the table. It stood at the very center of the room. Not dusty, not rotting, not even out of place, as if someone had placed it there just moments before she arrived. A small, round table made of dark mahogany, its surface smooth and shining despite the filth surrounding it. On it sat a single box. Maya stepped closer, cautious. The box was delicate, carved from some pale wood she couldn't name, with swirling patterns etched into every inch of its surface. Vines, maybe, or smoke. It was about the size of a jewelry box with a gold clasp shaped like a tiny rosebud. Something about it seemed familiar, though she knew she had never seen it before. She reached out a hand, then hesitated. A sound, soft, low, rustled in the room behind her. She spun around. Nothing. No wind, no movement. Yet the hairs on the back of her neck stood up. She wasn't alone. The feeling crawled over her skin like cold fingers. She backed, away from the box, and turned toward the hallway. Maybe there was another way out, a window, a back door, anything. She passed through a narrow archway into a dining room. The table there long collapsed under the weight of a fallen chandelier. Glass crunched beneath her boots. Each room was worse than the last. A child's bedroom, the bed made, a small stuffed bear sitting upright on the pillow, its button eyes staring into nothing. A kitchen, its cupboards hanging open like yawning mouths, mold creeping up the walls in delicate black veins. In the corner, an ancient stove still held a rusted kettle, as if someone had once planned to return and never did. There were no signs of life, and yet everything felt paused, not abandoned, frozen, like someone had been here. Recently, she heard the whisper again, this time closer. A hush of breath, like someone just behind her. Maya whipped around, heart in her throat. The hallway was empty. Then she noticed something else. Footprints, dustless footprints on the floorboards, hers and someone else's. A second set. Bare. Small. Leading away from the table, down the hall. She followed them slowly, drawn deeper into the house's belly. At the far end of the hallway, she came to a door. It was different from the others. Heavier, made of stone. Or something like it, with strange symbols etched into its surface. Faint light, golden and soft, spilled out from the gap beneath it. Something was behind that door. Something waiting. But the door was locked. She turned, preparing to go back. To reassess, to think. But when she returned to the main room, her breath caught. The box was no longer on the table. It was sitting in the middle of the hallway. The lid was slightly open. Maya's heart pounded in her ears. The house, silent a moment ago, now seemed to hum faintly, a deep, low resonance that vibrated in her bones. She didn't want to touch the box. Every instinct screamed to run, but something deeper inside, the same pull that had led her down the hidden path, told her she had come here for a reason, and that the box was part of it. The box sat there like a living thing, breathing softly in the dim hallway. The lid, tilted open just a crack, revealed only darkness within. No gleam of treasure, no secret message immediately visible. Yet it seemed to pulse with invisible energy, as though aware of Maya's gaze. She took a cautious step closer, the floorboards, groaning beneath her weight. Another step. The closer she got, the heavier the air around her became, thick like syrup, pressing against her skin. Maya crouched low, peering into the opening without touching it. Empty. Or, at least, it appeared that way at first, but as she leaned in, a shiver ran through her spine. From the heart of the box, a soft sound was rising, a distant, broken melody, like the last notes of a music box left to wind down, and beneath the music, faint voices, whispering. She snapped upright, her pulse hammering. The whispers grew louder, wrapping around her like mist. Words she couldn't quite make out, fragments in a language both familiar and alien. Her instincts screamed, "Leave. Now." But something stronger anchored her in place. The footprints. The second set of bare, dusty prints still stretched before her, down the hallway, leading toward the locked stone door. And something inside Maya whispered that she hadn't been brought here just to flee. She was meant to see, to understand. Gritting her teeth, she followed the footprints. The hallway seemed longer now, the walls bending inward, narrowing with each step. The wallpaper dissolved into cracked plaster, then into bare stone, ancient and rough. The golden light beneath. The locked door grew brighter, flickering like firelight. When Maya reached it, she knelt and pressed her ear to the cold surface. From the other side came a low, mournful hum. a sound so full of sadness it hollowed her chest. Then, layered into the hum, she heard something else. Laughter, crying, a clinking of glass, and the scratch of countless feet dragging across a floor. Images burst into her mind unbidden. A ballroom filled with dancers, their faces hidden behind masks too beautiful and too terrible to be human. A feast laid out on endless tables, dishes steaming with foods she could not name, and over it all, the droning music, the laughter that sounded wrong, stretched too wide, lasting too long. A celebration trapped in amber, decaying without end. Maya stumbled back from the door, her mouth dry. The golden light beneath the door pulsed once, like a heartbeat, and at the same moment she felt it, a presence behind her. Slowly, dreading what she might see, she turned. The house had changed. Where once there was dust and ruin, there was now the faded glory of a grand home. The hallway gleamed with chandeliers, their crystal arms covered in cobwebs. Portraits lined the walls, but the faces in them were blurred, smeared like wet paint. The scent of rotting flowers filled the air, and down the hallway, at the far end, figures were gathering, shadowy forms, twisting, waiting. One of them, a tall, thin man in a tattered suit, stepped forward. His movements were stiff, marionette-like. Though his face was a blur, Maya could feel his eyes on her, sharp and burning. He raised one trembling hand and pointed back toward the box. The message was clear. "Open it." Maya's breath hitched. Her hands felt numb, but she forced herself to move. Step by step, heart hammering, she retraced her path down the corridor to where the box still waited. As her fingers closed around the lid, the house seemed to hold its breath. The voices fell, silent. The golden light pulsed again, faster now as if urging her onward. Maya closed her eyes and opened the box fully. The box swung open on creaking hinges, revealing its secret at last. Inside, cushioned on black velvet, lay a small, heavy key. Antique and ornate, its bow carved into the shape of a coiled serpent. Beneath the key, almost hidden, was a scrap of yellowed parchment. Maya lifted it carefully. In spidery handwriting, it bore just 7 words. "Unlock the past to free the future." The house groaned low around her, like an old ship at sea. Maya turned the key over in her palm. It felt warm, almost alive, thrumming faintly with an invisible pulse that matched the beat of the golden light seeping under the heavy stone door. Somehow, she knew exactly where it belonged. Gripping the key tightly, she made her way back to the door. The closer she came, the more the house seemed to shift and stir, the walls breathing in and out like the flanks of some great sleeping beast. The figures at the far end of the hall watched without moving, their blurred faces locked in expressions of desperate hope or hollow dread, she couldn't tell which. At the base of the stone door, half hidden by crumbling mortar, Maya spotted a keyhole. It was ancient, rough-edged, worn by countless years, but when she slipped the key inside, it fit perfectly. The moment the key turned, the door shuddered. The golden light exploded outward, engulfing Maya in a flood of warmth that smelled of ancient wood and forgotten roses. She shielded her eyes as the stone door dissolved. Not broke, not fell, but simply vanished like mist in the morning sun. Before her was not another room. It was a vast hall, stretching far beyond the size of the house, lit by thousands of ghostly chandeliers that floated weightless in the air. The walls shimmered, not solid, but ever-shifting, as if the room were caught between this world and another, and in the center of it all stood the mirror. It rose from the floor like a monolith at least 20 feet high, framed in twisting vines and thorns carved from silver. Its surface was not glass but something deeper, a liquid darkness, rippling gently as if stirred by an unseen breeze. Maya stepped closer. At first, the mirror showed only swirling shadows, but as she stared, the shadows parted like a curtain, revealing a ballroom on the other side, a grand, endless dance floor under a velvet sky. Hundreds of figures moved within it, their forms hazy and flickering like reflections in water. They twirled in elegant patterns, waltzing to a tune Maya could barely hear, a wailing violin, a heartbeat drum. Their clothing was tattered and old-fashioned, silks and velvets moth-eaten and threadbare, their faces obscured by masks or, worse, blurred and melting into nothingness. It was a dance without end, a celebration turned into a prison. Maya pressed her hand lightly to the mirror's surface. It was cold, colder than ice. The figures continued to dance until one of them stopped. A tall man in a ruined suit, the same figure she had seen before, turned toward her. Though his face was nothing more than a smudge of features, she could feel his gaze, heavy, pleading. He raised a gloved hand and pointed, not at her, but at the base of the mirror. Maya's eyes followed his gesture and saw it, a small, nearly invisible keyhole embedded in the silver frame, tangled in the vines. The key. The key. From the box. Her heart hammered in her chest. Every instinct screamed that she was standing on the edge of something enormous, something far older and darker than she could understand. But she also knew, as surely as she knew her own name, that the dancers needed her. That this was why she had been drawn here. With trembling fingers, Maya approached the mirror, raised the key, and inserted it into the hidden keyhole. For one agonizing heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the mirror shuddered and began to ripple, its surface glowing with a fierce, brilliant light. The music in the ballroom shifted, growing louder, faster, more urgent. The dancers turned as one and rushed toward the surface. The mirror cracked. Not with a sound, but with a feeling, a vibration deep inside her bones. And a doorway tore open at the center. From it spilled golden mist, thick and warm and sweet-smelling, swirling around Maya's feet. One by one, the dancers emerged, wraiths, not shadows, but people, real, breathing people, shedding their decayed silks as they crossed the threshold, their faces sharpening from blurs into smiles of pure, aching gratitude. Maya stumbled back, overwhelmed, as the mist filled the hall. The tall man was the last to step through. He paused before her, bowing low. His voice, when he spoke, was like the rustle of leaves and the hush of distant waves. "You have broken the chain," he said. "The house of spoils will rest. And you, keeper of the key, you have set us free." Before she could ask what he meant, the dancers and the man dissolved into golden dust, carried upward on a sudden, joyful wind. The chandeliers dimmed. The mirror cracked one final time, then collapsed into a heap of silver vines and ash. The golden mist lifted, and the whole house, began to change. The world seemed to sigh as the last of the golden mist faded into the rafters. Maya stood still, heart pounding as silence settled over the house once again. But it was a different silence now. Not heavy and watchful, but peaceful. The oppressive weight had lifted from the air. Where rot and ruin once ruled, life had begun to return. The cracked walls stitched themselves whole, the faded wallpaper blooming anew with deep, rich colors. Cobwebs vanished in a breath. Chandeliers, no longer drooping and dusty, gleamed with clean crystal light. Even the scent in the air changed, from mildew and decay to something sweet and green, like a garden after rain. Maya turned, slowly taking it all in. And there, at the center of the hall, atop a new pedestal of dark wood, sat the box. It was no longer pale and lifeless. Now it gleamed, rich and dark, the carvings along its surface alive with movement, shifting slightly when she looked away. Vines growing, flowers blooming and curling as if breathing. The gold clasp, shaped like a rosebud, shone as if freshly polished. Drawn by a deep sense of purpose, Maya approached. She knew instinctively. The box was different now. It held something more than just a key. It held truth. She placed her hands on the sides of the box. The wood was warm beneath her palms, thrumming faintly with a heartbeat that wasn't hers. She lifted the lid. Inside, resting on deep crimson velvet, was not just the key she had already used, but a second object, a mirror shard, no bigger than her palm, its edges smoothed and safe to touch. The surface of the shard shimmered, reflecting not her face, but memories not her own. Flickering images of the trapped dancers she had freed, their long imprisonment in the mirror world, their silent pleas for help echoing through endless years. As she watched, the images shifted, showing the house itself long ago in its prime. Grand parties, laughter, joy, before the curse had come, before greed and selfishness had turned celebration into captivity. Beneath the shard, another scrap of parchment lay folded. Maya unfolded it carefully. This time, the writing was clearer, more deliberate. The house reflects the heart of its keeper. Beware what you bring inside. Beware what you leave behind. She read the words twice, feeling their weight settle into her bones. The box had not, simply held a key. It had held a mirror to the soul. The House of Spoils had once been a place of joy, twisted by human flaws into a prison. It could become that again, or something better. It all depended on who found it next. Maya closed the box with reverence, the carvings seeming to sigh and settle under her touch. She knew she could not take the box with her. It belonged here, woven into the house's foundation. It would wait, patient and timeless, for the next seeker. She tucked the shard into her jacket pocket. A reminder, a warning, a gift. As she turned to leave, she realized the front door stood wide open, sunlight streaming through it in golden sheets. Outside, the world looked brighter, sharper, more real than it ever had before. But before stepping over the threshold, Maya looked back one final time. The house had transformed completely. Its wooden boards were new and strong, the vines blooming with thick, fragrant roses. The windows were clear, the front porch inviting. Above the door, the old crooked sign had been replaced with a new one, hand-carved, painted with care. It read, House of Hope. Maya smiled softly, feeling tears prick the corners of her eyes. She stepped out into the sunlight, the shard of mirror warm against her heart. Behind her, the House of Spoils, no, the House of Hope, stood silent and serene, keeping its secrets, waiting for the next story to begin. The sunlight spilled warmly over Maya's shoulders as she stood at the threshold of the House of Hope. The the repaired door swinging gently in the spring breeze. Yet, even with the house restored, she could feel something unfinished, a whisper of something calling her back. She tightened her hand around the mirror shard tucked in her pocket. It pulsed faintly against her skin, urging her, tugging her toward the heart of the house once again. Maya turned from the open door and walked back inside. The grand hall awaited her, no longer crumbling but shining in quiet elegance. A gentle hum filled the air, a vibration, like music too soft to hear but strong enough to feel. The chandelier above glistened like a cluster of stars, and the newly polished floorboards mirrored the soft light. At the far end of the hall, something had changed. Where the great cracked mirror had once stood in the vast room beyond the stone door, there now hung a new mirror, or rather a new portal, framed in living vines and flowering blossoms. The silver vines she had seen earlier now bloomed with fresh white roses, their petals impossibly delicate. And in the center of the mirror, the surface no longer swirled with darkness. It shone clear. It reflected not just her image, but a corridor, a different place entirely. A hallway lined with doorways stretching into a misty distance. Each door was unique, some carved of oak, some painted bright colors, others shining like polished marble. And behind each one, Maya sensed, lay a different world, a different secret, a different truth. The house had become more than a house, it had become a crossroads. Maya approached, heart thudding in awe and trepidation. Her reflection in the glass shifted, one moment showing her as she was now, and the next flickering into versions of herself she didn't recognize. Older, younger, braver, broken, triumphant. The shard in her pocket grew warmer, almost buzzing. Now. Beneath the new mirror was a small stand, carved from the same living wood as the frame. Resting atop it was a shallow bowl filled with clear, rippling water. Engraved into the rim of the bowl were words in the same spidery script from the notes she had found. One step forward, one door opens, one truth revealed. Maya understood. The shard was her key, her offering. She pulled the piece of mirror from her pocket. It caught the light, sending fractured rainbows across the hall's polished floors. For a brief, dizzying moment, she thought she heard music. The same distant waltz from the trapped ballroom, now slow and beautiful, no longer mournful. She took a deep breath, placed the shard carefully into the bowl. The water accepted it without a splash. Instead, the surface of the water shimmered, then grew still again, the shard disappearing into its depths. The mirror reacted instantly. The surface rippled outward like a pond struck by a single stone, and from within the reflection, one of the doors, a small, simple one painted deep blue, glowed softly, beckoning. The house was offering her a choice, not a demand, not a trap and end, invitation. Maya stood for a long moment, heart in her throat. Behind her, the open door to the sunny world waited. She could walk away, leave the house of hope behind forever, carrying only the memory of what she had seen. Or she could step forward, choose a door, and see where the path led. Maya smiled to herself. Small, uncertain, but real. She had already stepped off the safe, familiar trail once. She could do it again. Without another glance back, she placed her hand on the mirror's surface. It was warm now, almost alive. The vines around the frame shifted slightly, as if sensing her touch, encouraging her. And then she stepped through. The world folded inward and exploded outward all at once. A rush of scents, jasmine, old paper, ocean salt, flooded her senses. Light and shadow danced across her skin. For one dizzying moment, she floated weightless. When her feet touched solid ground again, she stood not in the house of hope, but in a new place entirely. A lush green meadow under a sky swirling with violet and gold. The door behind her, the simple blue door, stood solitary in the field. Maya turned to face it, her heart thrumming with wonder. A journey had ended, but a new one had just begun. The meadow stretched endlessly before Maya, a soft ocean of green under the swirling violet sky. The air was sweet and sharp at once, full of the scent of blooming wildflowers and something older, something newborn. She turned slowly in place, taking in the dreamlike landscape. Rolling hills unfurled to the horizon, dotted with clusters of silver trees whose leaves chimed faintly in the breeze. A brook, narrow and laughing, twisted across the field like a ribbon of glass. Everything was alive here in a way she had never known. Vibrant, aware, almost breathing. Behind her, the simple blue door stood solitary in the grass, a tether to the house of hope she had left behind. It didn't close. It simply shimmered, waiting, not trapping her but offering her a way back if she chose. But Maya knew she would not go back. Not yet. This place had called her for a reason. The key, the mirror shard, the box, all had been steps toward this moment, like careful hands guiding her to a future she had never dared to imagine. She walked forward, her boots brushing through the soft grass. The sky above twisted and shifted as she moved, not menacing, but full of promise, like the pages of an unwritten story turning in a cosmic breeze. Far ahead, near the line where the meadow met a silver wood, Maya saw something, glinting, a shape, a structure. She quickened her pace. As she neared, the details sharpened. It was a new house, small but shining, its walls built from polished wood that glowed under the violet sun. Its windows were open to the breeze, their shutters painted in cheerful colors: cobalt blue, sunflower, yellow, deep emerald green. A sign hung from the porch, freshly carved. Maya read it aloud, her voice trembling with wonder. "The house you build." Her heart gave a strange, joyful leap. The house of spoils had reflected the broken hearts of those who entered it. Their greed, their regrets, their forgotten dreams turned sour with time. But here, this new place, this new beginning, it would be shaped not by old wounds, but by hope, imagination, and choice. Her choice. The door to the new house swung open without a sound, inviting her inside. Maya hesitated on the threshold, feeling the weight of it, the enormity of what was being offered. A blank slate, a world of doors, an endless string of beginnings if only she had the courage to walk through them. She stepped over the threshold. Inside, the house was warm and bright, though it contained almost nothing. Only a single table, bare and polished, sitting at the center of the wide wooden floor. A blank sheet of paper lay atop it, and beside it, a pen made from some strange silver wood. The house waited, breathing quietly. Maya approached the table. The pen fit perfectly in her hand. The page, smooth and empty, gleamed with a faint inner light. It asked nothing, demanded nothing. It offered. Maya smiled. Truly smiled. For the first time in what felt like years. She set the pen to the paper, and she began to write. The violet sky spun slowly outside, the meadow humming softly, the door to the house of hope still open in the distance. Not a cage, not a burden, but a memory, a foundation. Maya's story was just beginning, and this time it would be hers. The silver pen in Maya's hand moved almost of its own accord, tracing words she hadn't planned but knew deep in her heart. Each letter that flowed across the page seemed to breathe life into the house itself, a heartbeat woven through wood and stone and air. She wrote of gardens blooming in endless seasons, of staircases that led to secret worlds, of windows that opened onto distant stars. She wrote laughter into the walls and kindness into the floors. She wove courage into the door frames and hope into every nail and beam. And the house listened. The polished floors softened with warmth. Sunlight brighter than any she had ever known spilled through the wide windows, filling the room with a glow so pure it seemed almost sacred. Somewhere in the rafters, a bell chimed softly. Not an alarm, but a celebration, a note of welcome. When she finally lifted the pen, Maya knew something had changed. Not just around her, but inside her. She was no longer the woman who had wandered aimlessly down an overgrown path. She was something more. The soft whisper of the meadow wind curled into the house through the open door. With it came a gentle sound, a faint jingle, like tiny bells carried on the breeze. Maya turned toward the sound and saw it. On a hook beside the door hung a key ring. It was simple at first glance, a brass loop tarnished by time. But upon closer inspection, Maya saw that the ring held not one, but dozens of keys. Some were old and iron-wrought, others delicate and carved from crystal or bone or wood. Some shimmered with colors that shifted and danced like oil on water. Each key pulsed faintly, each humming with a different song, a different door, a different future. Above the hook, a plaque was engraved with a short inscription: Keeper of Keys, Seeker of Doors, Builder of Worlds. Maya's throat tightened. She understood now. The House of Spoils had trapped the broken past, binding it in rot and sorrow. The House of Hope offered freedom, but not passivity. Freedom to build, to shape, to choose. And she had been chosen, or perhaps she had chosen herself, to be its first keeper. Maya reached out and lifted the ring from the hook. The keys chimed together, a music that seemed to stitch itself into her very bones, as if they recognized her, welcomed her. The silver wood of the doorway shimmered. The blue door outside the house rippled gently, and beyond it, others began to appear across the meadow. Dozens, hundreds, rising like flowers after rain, each waiting for a key, a hand, a dream to turn the lock. Each door a world. Each key a promise. Maya slipped the keyring onto her belt, feeling its comforting weight against her hip. She stepped onto the porch and looked out across the shimmering fields. The meadow no longer felt empty. It felt endless. A horizon without limits. The journey that had begun on a dusty, hidden trail, a trail she had almost missed, had led her here to a new life richer and wider than anything she had dared imagine. Maya smiled, her spirit burning bright within her chest. She took a step forward, then another, and the keys at her side sang softly in the rising wind, as behind her the house she had built watched with silent, joyful pride. The Keeper of Keys had begun her walk among the doors of possibility, and the story, her story, was only just beginning. If you loved the journey through the House of Spoils, make sure to like, subscribe, and share with someone who believes in second chances and hidden magic. Tell us, if you found a hidden key today, would you dare to unlock the unknown? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Your next adventure is just a story away. Stay curious.